Hello, animation fans, and welcome to another iAnimate podcast. I'm your host, Larry Vasquez, and you're listening to episode 55. In this episode, we got to talk with the one, the only Bruce W. Smith. It was a neat opportunity to talk with Bruce. He's been in the animation industry for quite some time and has worked for such companies as Walt Disney Animation Studios, Don Bluth, and is currently over at Warner Brothers. He's worked as a character designer, storyboards, viz dev, but also as a supervising animator. He worked as a supervising animator on Emperor's New Groove and Dr. Facilier, which was an awesome character on The Princess and the Frog. Got to help with the character design on that, and so it was just a really neat opportunity to talk with him, to get to know his background, how he got into the animation industry, and where he's looking at going. So I'm sure you're definitely going to enjoy this podcast. How are you?
I'm good, man. I wish I had more light in here. I probably look kind of sinister right now. I don't know.
Like Dr.
Dr. Facilier. Yeah.
There you go.
Right.
Sorry, I just jumped on that video there where you showed how to draw him. So yeah, he was in my mind. You're talking about how sinister he was. So yeah.
Right.
So that's really, really cool. I really just appreciate you taking the time. I can't tell you how often we hear just, hey, thanks for that podcast. Because we deal with people around the world, it's always that neat opportunity for them to hear from someone who they didn't normally get to hear from. So,
oh, cool. Yes.
So yeah, just really appreciate you taking the time. What's that?
I don't know who you've interviewed thus far. Unfortunately, I haven't kept up with the podcast, but.
Okay, let's see. We've done one with Clay Cadis.
Clay, that's my guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see who else you might know. Quite a few Disney guys. Obviously Jason Ryan.
Okay.
He's our head of character animation here. Doug Bennett.
Right. I know Doug.
Yeah. Let's see who else. Patrick Osborne.
Right. Yep.
Some of our alumni who's been at Disney. I don't know if you'd know them quite as well. They're kind of newer guys.
Okay.
But yeah, we've had some really, really great guests. So just appreciate you taking the time.
No doubt. No, it's all good. Appreciate you finally getting a chance to get around to me. I'm number 56. I'm good with that.
Hey, you got to save the best for last, right?
That's what I'm saying. I'm shutting it down is what you're saying.
No. I'm going to go out with a mic drop. No.
Oh, good.
No.
I appreciate you reaching out.
Everett Downing. We've had Everett Downing on with us.
Yeah, that's my guy. Yes.
All right.
Grateful.
Let's see who else. I'm trying to think that you might know. LaShawn Thomas.
Oh yeah, that's my boy. That's right.
So yeah, we've had some great guys on here. So yeah.
Oh yeah, good man. Yeah, you're definitely well-rounded then.
Yeah.
Cool.
Trying to get some more ladies in here too.
There you go.
We've had some throughout the time. I had one gal, and this is why I started using Zoom. I was using Skype for a while.
Yeah.
And it was a gal from Pixar, and I think it was about the 48th podcast, first and only time. Right after I finished recording it, I looked for the file and it says 0 kilobytes.
Wow.
Ooh. I was mortified.
Devastating.
Oh, it was one of those things. And she was so, hey, don't worry about this and that. But I just felt absolutely horrible. So yeah.
Yeah, man. Oh my God.
So where are you at right now, if you don't mind me asking?
We're Warner Brothers.
Oh, cool. Okay. And what are you doing there?
Developing a project here, but while we're stewing and developing, if you know anything about development, sometimes it can be really great when you got momentum, and then all of a sudden when you don't have much momentum, it can develop itself into a very interesting purgatory. Waiting for stuff. You're like, come on, man. So in this case, I'm kind of right in the middle where developing a cool project hasn't been announced yet, but we're having some writing issues.
Now you have some background in writing, it looked like as well, that I was on your IMDb.
Yeah. Well, when I had my TV show, I would jump in and really help the guys kind of like, I do sort of, what would you say, bigger picture stuff.
Okay.
The real sort of intricate writing to the writers. But, in terms of, tossing ideas around, blue sky and stuff.
Cool.
Big beats. That's sort of my kind of extent to writing.
Okay.
And then some of the stuff on my IMDb is not necessarily completely true. Like, for example, I've never worked on Silverhawks or Thundercats or dude, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I can't even tell you how many times people come to my office and say, "You're Bruce Smith." I'm like, "Yeah." And I'm thinking, oh yeah, you worked on. Oh, they're thinking, Proud Family, Baby's Kids. You worked on Thundercats, my favorite. I'm like, oh man, no, that wasn't this guy.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Not this guy.
I share an office, a big office with my brother here, and I just was going through that. And I said that very thing. I said, "Hey, he worked on Silverhawks."
I didn't know what Silverhawks is. I was like in the '80s, and I was a young cat working on some Filmation stuff. Working at Don Bluth at the time, I think. Also, I was like, just getting my feet wet. So writing at that point wasn't necessarily my forte.
Okay.
Yes. So wow, good thing we got that worked out now.
Yeah, because then I scrolled down. I'm like, Thundercats 2? This is my guy. No.
Right. Yeah. Let's talk Thundercats for a second, Bruce. Oh, let's. Okay.
Because it'll be a second.
Right. Yeah. Let me create some stories to kind of go into because I have no Thundercat experience. I like the title sequence. Title sequence is cool, but
yeah.
Thing.
We'll jump into this because I don't like taking up more time than is needed because I know you guys have busy schedules and life and family and things like that. So I really I appreciate you taking the time. I've seen you around on Twitter and stuff like that. So it's really a cool opportunity to get you in on this.
Perfect. I try to speak my mind on Twitter whenever I get a chance. Whenever something arouses my general animation soul.
Well, first off, I always like hearing how people kind of get into the industry. As I mentioned kind of beforehand, I was looking at your IMDb. Obviously, like you said, not everything's completely accurate, but you've got obviously a huge, extensive, and diverse skill set there, whether it be from biz dev to co-directing to supervising animator, and on a lot of different projects here. So it's always neat for me to kind of see the beginnings there. So how did you get into the industry? What made you kind of think, hey, this is something I'd like to do, things like that?
Wow. Well, I guess I've been drawing since I was like maybe 5 years old or something like that.
Okay.
And when I was a kid, my mom used to leave little notepads by the telephone. So in other words, like she'd be off at work and, we would have to take, notes back in the day when there wasn't such a thing as answering services and stuff like that. Take notes who called, this, and that, and the other, right? And when she would get home, she would notice that the drawing pads were pretty much all, or the notepads were pretty much all drawn up with my drawings, my bad doodles. And she would sort of, discipline me for drawing crazy stuff. But what I would do is that was my first sort of flipping thing. Mm-hmm. So I would just draw dots on all the pages and watch them move around the page. You know what I mean? It's like flip them and magically these sort of balls and stuff are just kind of bouncing and moving around. And that was the first time I sort of kind of discovered animation. Then there was another unfortunate incident where where there was this TV show called Winky Dink, right? You're probably way too young to know what Winky Dink is, but what it was sort of the first kind of television show that allowed you as the viewer to interact with Winky Dink. So in other words, here's Winky Dink TV show. It's drawn in a very sort of J. Ward type of style, very simplistic. And, Winky Dink is running away from the villain, let's just say in the episode, but now he's come across a cliff, and the only way he can get from one cliff to the other is if you, as the viewer, draws a bridge on your TV, to get him from one place to the other. You draw the bridge, and he, runs across the bridge, and now, gets away from the villain, right? So, hey, man, I'm watching TV. I'm 7 years old or whatever. And I'm like, oh, Winky Dink needs a bridge. Let me just draw this bridge. I take this marker that I found and draw a bridge on my mom's TV set, And I remember she came home one day but the problem was, like I said, you couldn't get it off. Well, what it was you needed the Winky Dink drawing kit, to actually do this task. And that would be like some simple acetate, I guess, that you would place on your television, and then you draw the acetate and he goes across the bridge, and so be it. Well, listen, man, I'm from South Central Los Angeles. Ain't nobody buying me no Winky Dink drawing kit. You know what I'm saying? So I drew on the TV, and that thing didn't come off. And so I just remember, what did come off is my pants.
The belt, that's right.
I didn't get my ass whooped that day. So, So yeah, so from that point, my mom said, like, I need to find him an outlet for this sort of, cartooning, thing, that's this cartooning Jones that he has. So my elementary school teacher found a school in Hollywood that was sort of, in the summer, they would actually give free animation courses, oddly enough.
That's killer.
And so that was, I was like 7 or 8 year olds taking summer animation courses. And that was sort of the first time I actually saw and experienced real animation for the first time.
That's awesome. That's fantastic.
It was fun. It was fun. I made my first film like when I was like maybe 10 years old. So a couple of summers later, made a really interesting film, that sort of breathed 70s. I was actually drew nudity in the movie. So back in the 70s, there was a thing called streaking, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, man. So I actually and it was sort of like that kind of impromptu thing that happened. So in the middle of my cartoon, I just created this impromptu streaker that ran across the screen.
And you're how old?
Oh man, I was like maybe 9 years old,
So at 9 years old, in the 70s, a 9-year-old could do that, right?
Yeah, exactly, right? But yeah, the film will never see the light of day. It's sort of tucked away neatly in somewhere in my studio at home.
That's awesome.
But again, it just gave me that Jones of understanding exactly what this medium is and what it could be. And listen, the first Disney film I saw was 101 Dalmatians, and once I saw that, coupled with learning animation for the first time, I'm in.
Awesome. Yeah, because that's one of the things I always kind of curious is where people get that kind of light bulb moment that, hey, this is something that I could do,
Right. Yep. Yeah. I mean, that's completely what it was for me. And not knowing a whole lot about, what's really entailed and just kind of the history of animation. I just know I was just a kid growing up loving stuff like the Flintstones and Jetsons. But I knew that something was very different about a Disney film. Like those characters seem to breathe and look and feel very human, but in a different form. Mm-hmm. So I was completely like, I got to find out what this is.
So what was so that's kind of early on here, high school-ish. Were you involved in a lot of art classes then as well? So
through high school, it was always something that for me was kind of tucked in the back. I mean, people knew that I could draw, people knew I drew cartoons and this and that and the other. But I mean, different things come to focus at that point. I got into athletics. I'm playing basketball, now I'm dating, here come girls. So it was just simply something that I stuck with. But naturally, here comes high school graduation and the question of what do you want to do, for your career. And I knew that what I wanted to do, nobody knew anything about. And animation was like, I need to find a school that actually does this type of thing. And I found CalArts sort of on my own.
Oh, wow.
And so California Institute of Arts, if is sort of like at that time, this was, 1980 was sort of the mecca of animation. Mm-hmm. So I applied there and got accepted. Listen, but my portfolio was very weak. I didn't know what a portfolio was or anything like that. I just gathered a group of drawings that I had done at home and submitted. And, thankfully they saw that there was something there and that this kid had, because when I got to CalArts, it was a very eye-opening experience. So, just to give you just the lay of the land. I mean, my classmates were guys who went on to direct, movies like Beauty and the Beast, Lion King, Lilo and Stitch. Like they were sort of the game changers in our business when you think about it. I mean, I think a lot of the artists, guys like Rob Minkoff, Chris Sanders, Chris Bailey, Kelly Asbury, Kevin Lima, all these guys are my classmates.
Wow, that's amazing.
Kirk Wise, Gary Trousdale. These were guys that I sort of sat across and was learning the medium along with them. But some of these guys came in already well prepared. Some guys had relationships with some of the 9 old men and stuff like that already.
Wow. Now, it's kind of funny, and this obviously pales in comparison to the guys that you're talking about. But I remember, because I've gone through the program on iAnimate, and one of the first things I remember when we jumped in is people start posting some of their work and stuff like that. And it was one of those, oh my goodness moments where it's like, you kind of really go, okay, I have to step up my game. Is that kind of how you felt, or was there one of those things that you kind of, what were you thinking, I guess, during that time?
Oh man, no doubt. I remember so I remember class start. I was freshman. School started in September. By November, by our Thanksgiving break, my life drawing teacher pulled me aside, and my life drawing teacher was a guy who worked on the dancing mushroom sequence of Fantasia. Like all of our teachers had links to mainly to Walt, and also to a lot of the old school films that we saw and adored as kids. So he was a real deal. This guy Elmer Plummer, and he pulled me aside and he said, my life drawings were rather weak. And he said, look, I'm going to tell you straight up, if you don't get this, you don't understand this, you're not going to really get into this business. So that was literally 2 months in. And I remember after that, I really had to kind of,
buckle down.
Yeah, buckle down. And that's when I sort of discovered all-nighters and stuff like that. Cal Arts was a unique school because really the focus was mainly on all the different animation disciplines. You don't really, get that in different schools. Like, we didn't have normal classroom settings, with the exception of maybe once a week, we'd have normal classrooms, dealing with, English and science and stuff like that. But, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and your weekends was all animation, whatever, be it story, be it character design, animation, layout. I mean, these were all things that we were taught, for 8 hours a day. That's pretty cool,
Yeah.
And that's what made it really fun. And what was cool also was that all the artists there all had different disciplines. No one, you had some guys who were really great at animation, some guys who were really great at story, some guys who were really great at layout, some guys who were just really incredible draftsmen that just didn't know where to adapt, that skill set. So it was great to sort of like usurp, knowledge from all your classmates. And what was cool too about the classmates that we were all giving, we're all sort of learning at the same time. So it was sort of internal struggle and everybody was willing to help everybody else to achieve a certain level of understanding what this medium was.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, so that was really sort of encouraging and not completely intimidating,
okay.
Because there's some classes that, listen, we just weren't going to be so great at. Our design teacher, Bill Moore, straight up told us that, there's a lot of stuff you're not going to understand until you leave school. And it was true. I mean, Bill Moore taught, the basics of the intricacies of design, not just character design, but design, which would go into how you would stage, how you would your staging and your storyboards, how to tell a story, what's important, what guides your eye in terms of design and color, how color works, the science of color. I mean, all the stuff that I kind of didn't understand. And, he was the guy who you'd hang projects up. The legendary stuff with Bill Moore is like you'd hang projects up in his classroom, and he'd get pretty, he was like one of those characters out of Mad Men, the TV series, where he dressed like straight out of the 50s or something like that. He'd be smoking in the classroom, and if he doesn't like your design project that you turn in once a week, he would take a cigarette at the end of the cigarette and light your project on fire. Like he's that, you know what I mean? So I remember he passed by one of my projects on a time, and he looked at it, and it was awful. It was some color and design, shape project that we had to do, and I'm young, it doesn't quite understand what we're doing yet. And I remember he took it, and he hung it upside down, and he said, yeah, it looks bad. So,
he's like, you like apples? How do you like them apples?
Straight up. You get humiliated in that class. It was probably the most challenging class that we sort of all had out of it. But there were guys in it who really got it. Like Chris Sanders understood it. Meathoff understood the class. At least they scored. There's some weeks where you wouldn't be the consistent winner in the class. 2 weeks you win, next week you're like in last place. It was like Project Runway or some shit. You know what I mean? That's exactly what it was. Project Runway. You're the guy who gets eliminated this week. But nonetheless, we learned a lot. But I knew early on that one of the subjects that I really sort of gravitated to was animation. I mean, that was one thing that I knew was animation. I knew how to gather a certain amount of drawings and move them around And then I had to understand acting and stuff
Okay.
like that. I mean, there was levels to it, but once you understand just the simple kinetic nature of moving drawings, that helped a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
What motivated you during that time to kind of keep going? Because obviously it sounded like it was pretty tough. Is it just that drive that, hey, I'm not doing anything else in my life. This is my goal. This is what I'm doing here. And that keeping you pushed forward, was it, like you mentioned a little bit earlier, that the people you were surrounded with, just a strong work ethic, what was it that kind of kept you going?
I think it was exactly that. I think, there was no plan B. Like this, I'm here at the school for a reason. Like, I'm here, I got accepted here, I got something here. It's up to me at this point to really, keep the spark moving. And, to be honest, I think with each project, you would learn a little something that would give you a sense of like, okay, phew, I do understand what this is. You know what I mean? Yeah, I think it was really that. And to be honest, it's like, I couldn't think of anything better that I would be doing. It's like, man, like I said, I come from LA, South Central LA. I remember the idea of doing cartoons was alien to the people that, that I grew up around. I mean, literally, my mom thought that just like Archie Bunker, Fred Flintstone reported to a set every month, and he waited for the cameras to roll. And that's kind of what people perceived animation as being. So, and for me, it was just like, I love doing this stuff. And I was a geek and a fan first, and so getting a chance to sort of like, listen, this may sound corny, but like, going into the studio and breathing in the wood desk was something that was like, it was just germane in what I was like wanting to achieve. Like hearing the pencil sharpeners and hearing the paper flip and just taking a breath and looking around the studio and seeing everybody flipping papers and drawings and stuff. And it was like, this is really cool, Yeah. So that was just part of the fabric, I realized, of who and what I was going to be in this business.
Gotcha. Yeah. Now your mom, supportive in this, obviously, because you were there, but what was she thinking during this time?
I think in the beginning, my mom probably didn't know she didn't know if this was going to turn out anything. She just she knew the term starving artist. You know what I mean? Like that, it's like, this boy gonna starve. This boy gonna starve. That's what she knew. So I had to really kind of help maybe disprove this theory, so to speak. I had nothing else to sort of like, outside of just like showing her bits and pieces of what I was doing, which she still probably didn't understand until she saw my film after the freshman year. Okay. She saw that, okay, well then there is something here, and there's some other people here that are doing that just as crazy as he is. So I guess there's something to this thing. So it that was kind of the saving grace, I think. Yeah.
Cool. And then when she sees your name on the big screen, that's my boy's name.
Right. That's that boy. I swear that boy, I didn't know he was going to turn into nothing. Something. So yes, I can hear her voice in my head pretty much daily, right? Yeah.
So out of Cal Arts, how quickly did you get your first gig? How did that kind of transition?
So the interesting thing about Cal Arts is that it's a 4-year school, but the way the trickle-down effect works was that, with Cal Arts at that time accepted like maybe 32, 33 students a year, right? So freshman year, you've got about 33 students. Sophomore year, you've got about 30 students. Junior year, you've got about 12 students. Senior year, there's probably like maybe 3 or 4 students.
Wow.
Why are there so few people as you continue to push forward at Cal Arts? Because most people get picked out of the school to get a job. It's almost like if this were, sports, this were the NBA, like guys would go early, into the draft to get a job. And what Disney would do is that they would have like this sort of apprentice program. So Disney was responsible for that too. It's like, in essence, Cal Arts is sort of like a Disney farm club. You know what I mean? It's like they would find the best people and give them summer internships, kind of like give them taste of what studio is and what it's like. It's like that. That's normally reserved for like, the best 4 or 5, students. And then after that, you've got the other students around town, the other studios around town that are just simply, hiring, fresh blood, for summer gigs and stuff like that also, right? So after my second year, my film got picked for the producer show. The producer show is when producers come to the studio and actually view the work and, pull you aside and say, hey, sir, I think you would, we'd like to offer you an apprenticeship at the studio, blah, blah, blah. It's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
Plucked for the producer show. Now, we had a thing called hot splices back in the day, right? Where hot splices, actually, you were working on film, and we'd actually have a splice gun and glue. Exactly what I said. It's like hot splice. So you got to learn how to hot splice and edit your film together. Because, normally when you send your shots out, it's not any consecutive order. You have to just send your shots out as they get done, and the films come back, it get processed, and you have to edit it together, right?
Yeah.
So me, being, I guess, not the best editor, I'm hot splicing my film together. And so what happens is they would do a test run. And if your hot splice is broke, then you do your best to splice it back together. But if your hot splice is broke in the middle of a show, then that means that affects all the other shows that may be behind, the other films that may be behind your film or in front of your film or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if your films break in the trial run, they're not going to show your film. So what happens? My film breaks in the trial run. So I'm like, shit. And so at this time, they gave me my film back, and then on the bulletin board was an advertisement for a studio that's just starting up that's looking for animators, Studio Carter Mendez. So I'm like, all right, well, let me splice my film back together, and hustle it down to this new studio. So while the producer show's playing and everybody's at this, producer show, I took my film along with maybe a handful of other guys whose film probably didn't make the cut or whatever, down to this new studio and got hired as what I'm thinking as a summer gig, as an animator, which is rare also, because like when you come out of school, you're going to be sweeping floors. You're going to be doing in-betweens. You're going to be doing those small things as an artist, sort of get you indoctrinated in this business. But I got picked up as an animator, which was like, whoa, this is great.
Yeah.
Studio, animator, summer gig. I'm making $350 a week. This is fantastic. Right? So I'm like, cool. And I'll just go back to school for my third year and I'll be all good. But, I get to actually make some money this summer instead of working at, AM, PM or whatever during summer, right? So, so I got that gig, and then when September came around, I just made the decision, like, you know what? I'm having a great time. I'm animating. I got my foot in the door.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at my financial package for the next year, and it was like maybe 65% scholarship, but the rest of the money I had to probably come up out of my pocket with. I was like, man, I'm here. So
that's
I'm
the
just
goal.
going to roll the dice, and, and so I accepted the job, and it's still summertime. So I'm still around. That's kind of how that happened. So I just kind of left after my second year, along with a lot of other guys. They kind of left after the second year too. But it's normal. Like I explained, like, normally when for the junior year, it's much smaller, turnout.
Yeah.
So lots of guys leave Cal Arts, and the truth of it is, I tell students this all the time too, is like a degree in animation doesn't do much.
Mm-hmm.
This is really one of the few, occupations that's completely talent-based, skill-based, and you're relied on to bring it from a skill standpoint, not what a piece of paper tells you what you actually can do.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Now, how long were you at that? Was it end up being a summer gig at that particular place? You said, I didn't quite catch what you said it was called.
Yes. So that's another story. So I'm thinking, okay, great. I'm going to be an animator. I'm going to be here for the rest of my life. I have to be at Disney and have a career. I don't have to be I'm going to be here at Carter Mendez, right? And so I remember coming to work one day, and the director at the studio, I remember driving up, and cops were outside. And I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And he was hemmed up against the wall. And I was like, what's going on? So after the cops leave, I asked the guy, Phil Mendez, incredible artist, incredible, if you're ever interested in interviewing, finding old heads to interview that have really great stories, you got to find Phil Mendez.
Okay.
Incredible artist, like crazy, great stories. One of those Renaissance man. He was a great designer. Worked with Mill Call at the studio, Disney.
Wow.
You never hear his name in the archive of animation stuff, but incredible art.
Very cool.
And he was telling me that something funky is going on with the owner, Tom Carter. He doesn't know exactly what it is, but because I'm running the artistic side of the studio, they thought that I knew what was going on. I don't know. We'll find out. Blah, 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 right? But in the meantime, we had a great time with Phil and, some really great guys I'm working with. Trousdale, Chris Bailey, Chris Wall, Kelly Asbury, a lot of us young guys coming into the studio, like we're really enjoying all this. So then, I'd say about like maybe 4 months after that, so I was at the studio almost a year. 4 months after that, I remember driving to the studio, and all of a sudden I drive up, and there's cops there again, and the gates were locked. So I'm from LA again. I got some. I have this street instinct that just kind of kicks in right away. So I just jump back into my car and drive off. Right?
I don't need to be
I
here.
was like, okay, that's sort of the end of that gig. Whatever's happening there. We come to find out that this guy Tom Carter was into money laundering, and I think the studio was actually, part of the Ponzi scheme of something that was going on in his world at the time. I don't know. It's kind of crazy, but that's how that first job ended.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. And now it's sort of the first time you sort of like, okay, this is the reality of this business. All these jobs are not going to last forever or whatever, right?
Had a fun run, and that's done.
Now it's time to hit the pavement. But the best thing about it was that, I was hired as an animator and actually had animation, for the first time in my portfolio as a young kid. I'm like, 19, 20 years old. And so that actually helped me get my next gig, which was at Don Bluth Studios.
Oh, okay. Very cool.
Yes. So we worked on, at that studio at the time, we were working on Dragon's Lair video games.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I remember that.
So, yeah. So
that
everybody,
was beautiful.
You've seen the latest Stranger Things 2. You see that, episode 1 was over the guys playing the Dragon's Lair game.
Right?
Right?
I remember that in the arcades. Yeah.
Oh man. Yes. So we were brought on, and listen, at the time you got to figure that the only game in town was Disney doing full animation, full, beautiful, gorgeous, luscious animation that we were taught. Disney was the only game in town.
Yeah.
You had some offshoots, there was things happening around town, like I'm not putting them in the same category, but you had some really great people working on them, like the Bagdasarians were doing the Chipmunk movie. And there was a Care Bears movie, but nothing really was at the level of what Don Bluth was doing. He was just coming off of Secret of NIMH.
Yeah.
And
one of my
everybody
faves.
remembers how, great, visually that film was. And so to get a chance to sort of like work with Don and his crew, the tutelage of like John Pomeroy, who was a great animator at the time, was really, that was fantastic. To get a chance to see his approach to animation and Don's approach. And the thing was, we were working on like full-blown testosterone-driven animation. People, kids look at Princess Daphne and still get aroused off of that. Right? Daphne, wow, that's the first character I've actually seen with nipples. The princess, that's pretty fantastic. And then you got Dr. Daring jumping around and doing all these really great athletic things, and all that animation was John Pomeroy, man. He was really fantastic. Fantastic animator. And his design sense was really great. It was really simple. It spoke to me in terms of just my graphic nature of approaching a drawing, He had interesting rules visually, straights against curves and stuff like that.
Nice.
First time I sort of like, understood and heard about that theory. And then the most key element that I learned was, I remember I was animating a shot, and as an animator working on a light board, and my bottom light was on my light board, I'm creating in-betweens with my bottom light. Gary Goldman, who was one of Don's right-hand men, came up the stairs and looked at how I was animating. He's like, animate, you have that shot? He's like, yeah. He told me, cut the bottom light off. It's like, no great animator animates with the bottom light on. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, you'll do much better if you cut the light off. So from that point on, I never animated with the bottom light. I always animated with just simply the top light, because he said and it was true. He says what you do is that you start to see and feel the shapes more, and you learn how to create tighter in-betweens when you don't animate with the bottom light. You actually create drawings instead of in-betweens.
Oh, interesting.
And so I made it a point from that point to never use the bottom light. So he says, yeah, Milt never used bottom line. So listen, when you look and step frame through any of Milt Kahl's scenes, you can, or take a stack of his drawings and just pull a drawing out. And one of the things you notice that you never see an in-between. You always see a drawing. You always see a pure drawing, no matter how you shuffle the deck, all you want to. And his drawings are always drawings. And that's what I always admired about Milt Kahl's work. So I made it a point from that point. It's like, yes, all my drawings are going to be drawings. They're not going to be in-betweens. They're not going to be that weird in-between where, it's like fingers are weird and eyes are weird just because it just simply needs to move from one drawing to the next.
Interesting.
All your drawings have to be living and breathing things on their own. And I learned that discipline and kept that with me to this day.
Very cool.
Yeah. So the Don Bluth thing was really great from an artistic standpoint, just because, a lot of us guys were young 21-year-olds, and yeah, we all want to jump and run and leap and do all that really cool animation, and sort of, save the world and beat up the villain and all of that cool stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember those shots. I used to envy this animator, Dan Kinster used to get all these shots where in the end of the Space Ace game, for example, there's, Ace battling Borf, and really cool fight scenes. And I'm a big, sort of fight scene guy. I love any action-oriented movie. And to get the fight scene, I've never had a chance to animate a fight scene in a movie before, because our movies don't necessarily allow fight scenes. Let's just be real. It's like, what animated movie can you name right off the top of your head that's not called The Incredibles that has fight scenes? You know what I'm saying?
They fall off a cliff or something like that, huh?
Yeah, exactly, man. We don't get that stuff. We don't get to do that stuff, which is another big issue about what we do in this business. But I just know that I remember him animating those scenes and how jealous I was that he really got a chance to jump in and have a blast animating these really crazy action scenes. I love that stuff. So, so that was the next thing that I did. Yes. Mm-hmm.
How long were you at Don Bluth?
Oh man, we were at Don Bluth Studios for I'm saying about a year and a half, almost 2 years, I think. We left. I say we because it was a band of us that were sort of the guys from Cal Arts who, were sort of angry that we didn't get a chance to get all the great scenes. Just arrogant, sort of. I'd say we were arrogant, but I think we were sort of just kind of puffed up, ready to handle a lot more responsibility that was given to us.
Okay.
And I think we left right before American Tail. American Tail was staffing up, and at that time they were moving to Ireland.
Oh, okay.
And they were like, "Hey, listen, we're going to go to Ireland, and we're doing American Tail. We're not going to do all of it here. We're going to move to Ireland." And to be honest, I was like, ain't no black people in Ireland. That's kind of how that.
You're not going to blend in too easily, huh?
Dude, I was really well. It's like that's not where I'm going to be spending my time. So at that point, I jumped into Filmation's arms.
Ah.
Yes, yeah, I laugh. I was just laughing with a buddy of mine, Chris, about that today. How we were working on He-Man and She-Ra, chapters in my life that I would like to skip over.
The nostalgia, though, it's got some great nostalgia.
Well, yeah, I think what's funny now is you see those Geico commercials with He-Man and.
I haven't seen those yet.
Oh, that's crazy! Yeah, it's just interesting, kind of like Skeletor and He-Man, and PSTD. I freak out when I see that stuff. PTSD alert! Right? Oh shit! There's He-Man on the screen.
Get some clothes on.
Yeah. Right, yeah. It's like a drinking game with me. So yeah, we spent a lot of time at the bar. Me, myself, Chris Wall, Will Finn.
Did you learn how to animate fast there?
What was that?
You learn how to animate fast there?
We were in the cleanup. I was so not wanting to go to Ireland that I took a cleanup animation job.
Okay.
It actually paid more than
really?
I was paying at the time, which was strange. That was the other beef I had with Don, that he wasn't paying us rightfully as animators. So So we did that, and then at this point, you got to. This is sort of like mid '80s, and animation was kind of dead. Like Disney was almost closing its door at that point. You know, I'm sure people know that story about guys were working on Cauldron. They finished Rescuers Down Under or whatever, Fox and the Hound. Ron Miller was running the place, and it was just a whole different. They weren't hiring. And you had really great guys that were working on, Muppet Babies, you know what I mean? And Care Bear movie, and so during that time, it was like I was bouncing from Filmation. I was doing freelance, working with a offshoot Disney group. Guys, I was working on offshoot Disney stuff. Started getting commercials.
Okay.
So that was really fun because I love, watching commercials grow up and stuff like that. Growing up, and so getting a chance to really sort of, I guess, when you look at it, just kind of cultivating relationships around town, because as an animator, you kind of need a lot of people to know you, if you're going to stay employed in a lot of different places.
Okay.
Which eventually led me into to this project that we're working on at it was Disney, but it was, again, sort of an offshoot. Bob Rogers. We were making a film about the making of animation, and it was called Back to Neverland.
Okay.
It featured it was animation live action directed by Jerry Reese. Featured Robin Williams and Walter Cronkite, and Walter Cronkite, if you know, was an American journalist back in famous journalist back in the 60s, 70s. I'm talking about all you youngsters now. When news wasn't fake news, and he was sort of the kind of aficionado of news, and he walked us through the process of animation. With Robin Williams as sort of like his comedy relief, I guess, and so Robin Williams at that time, a comedian who everyone knew at the time. Really manic style, wild style, and which is really refreshing for animation because he has this sort of improv sensibility that for us as animators, we love that sort of improv sensibility. And so, I was hired by Jerry to be supervising animator on this project. And,
awesome.
It was great. I mean, it was a great project, really fun. We shot the live action and then eventually went through the animation. And if you were to comb through the history of that project and actually pull it up on YouTube, you would actually see a very handsome young black man playing the animator in that movie. That would be myself. I actually had hair back in the day. And had my Bobby Brown flat top.
Oh, there you go.
So yes, I actually got a chance to play an animator. What was cool about that was that Jerry Reese, we were casting all the people that were working on the project ended up playing roles in the project because we knew animation. We were the truth in that process. So when the studio was asking Jerry to cast for an animator, Jerry's like, I got animators who know how to flip scenes and know how to really make that stuff look and feel real.
They don't have to act it.
I know guys who know how to shoot the camera, the Oxberry, and make it feel real. So it was to this day I thank Jerry for that because at that time I can't think of any people of color that was represented in animation at any on any level. So I listen, getting a chance to sort of play that, people think I actually animated all of that stuff that I actually flipped, but I didn't do that. But I made the anime. I animated a lot of the Captain Hook stuff in that, which was fun because Peter Pan was one of my favorite movies.
Very cool.
Growing up and getting a chance to animate Captain Hook was really, it was great. I had a great time working on the film. Then that led me back into Disney to work on projects like Roger Rabbit, working on Roger Rabbit shorts. That first stint at Disney was probably like maybe 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, was that Return to Neverland, was that live action mix?
Live action mixed with animation.
Okay.
So the live action kind of, I wouldn't say bookend pieces, but it opens it in live action and eventually each step takes you into the story of, Robin Williams ending up as one of the lost boys in Peter Pan and into the clutches of Captain Hook and having to escape with the help of, the lost boys and Wendy and Tinkerbell. You know what I mean? It was just a really fun piece.
What's just cool about that is because you said you went on to Roger Rabbit, which was that same kind of hybrid there too.
Yeah, Roger Rabbit was fun because that was at the time where now the industry is starting to feel a certain rebirth.
Mm.
And Roger Rabbit was being produced at the same time Little Mermaid was being produced.
Oh, okay.
So when both of those films came out, I think Roger Rabbit came out before Mermaid. That's when the Renaissance started. Um, Roger Rabbit obviously was a box office hit and sort of was also a technological hit,
Right.
animation, and gave birth to not just Roger Rabbit, but also to all these old cartoon characters that were in the film. Also, Bugs Bunny, Donald Duck and Daffy Duck playing together in a movie. That was a big deal. You know what I mean? And we come to find out that that those characters were contractually signed to the film. So in other words, it's like, you had all these different studios that were vying to get their films into the to get their films into the get their characters into the film. So when you look at the movie again, you'll notice that, for instance, MGM characters, you have Droopy.
Mm-hmm.
He's an MGM character.
Yeah.
But the characters that don't show up, are Tom and Jerry. Like you can have Droopy, but you can't have Tom and Jerry. You know what I mean? It's
too much money.
You can have Betty Boop in this movie from the Fleischer Studios.
Mm-hmm.
You can have Betty Boop in this movie, but you can't have Popeye.
Mm.
So there was a lot of really odd negotiating going on around town to make sure that these characters are in this film. That's why you'll never see a Roger Rabbit 2. Is because all the negotiations that have to go on for studios to put their characters in this movie. That's why you didn't see Woody Woodpecker in the movie. You know what I mean? Reminds
me a little bit of Wreck-It Ralph when you see all these video game characters too from different studios.
Right. Those characters are paid players in that movie.
Yeah.
So you got to get the rights to these characters. So and who knows who's holding the rights to these guys nowadays? You know what I mean? It's like Warner Brothers now owns the rights to all those Hanna-Barbera characters. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So, I mean, the rights are sort of spread out. I mean, we all know the argument of Oswald and, of where he is and who actually owns the rights to Oswald. Disney had to buy the rights back to Oswald, I believe.
Oh, okay.
So, stuff like that. But again, fun film to work on. Amazing crew working on that film. And like I said, it sort of led to the rebirth of animation. So, for Disney, the Little Mermaid, which they didn't know was going to be a hit or not, allowed Beauty and the Beast. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which allowed Aladdin. So at that point, we're really shooting on all cylinders here.
What was something that you learned during that time that you kind of took with you on that career, or with you on your career?
I think mainly for me, at that point, artistically, there was a certain sophistication to animation.
Okay.
That again was sort of being put forward. There was a certain sophistication in storytelling and what the directors were after. When you think of, we're now moving into musicals and stuff like that with Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast, and for me this is the time where I harken back to where it's like, okay, this is a great time to be in the industry, obviously, but where is the African American voice in this business right now, right? It's like I love working on those films, but I felt like at this point, when you're designing characters, you're creating characters, work on these films, it's good to be sort of inclusive, thinking, a bit more wider in terms of the characters that you're using to tell your stories with. And I don't think that anyone was really thinking that way,
Gotcha. Okay.
So I felt like it was just sort of like this urge inside of me to sort of try to include characters of color in what we're doing moving forward. Now, mind you, it's like we're at a time where history wasn't necessarily kind to African Americans specifically in terms of animation. And so it was tough for artists to try to create characters of color to help drive the narrative of their stories. I get
Gotcha.
that. So I was after trying to create or be involved in projects that spoke in that way. So so that's kind of when Bebe's Kids start to crawl into town.
Okay.
The Hudlin brothers had the project initially we're going to do, this project with Robin Harris, who's a, great comedian, in LA. He had this, comedy shop in LA called the Comedy Act Theater. I was familiar with it. I'm from LA. Knew Robin Harris, knew his routine. And they had this project after they did House Party. They wanted to do Bebe's Kids as a TV series, just as an offshoot vehicle for Robin Harris. But then Robin Harris passed suddenly, and the Hudlin brothers were left with still wanting to do it, trying to find a way to do it. And Reggie, being a big animation fan, thought as animation as being an outlet for that.
Mm.
So at the time we were at Hyperion, we were doing a project called Rover Dangerfield.
You were at where?
At Hyperion Pictures. So we were doing a project called Rover Dangerfield.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember, who did I interview that worked on that one? Oh, was it Tim Ingersoll? Did you work with Tim Ingersoll?
I may have. The name sounds familiar.
He was at Cal Arts as well beforehand, but he ended up going to DreamWorks. So you may not have, but yeah, I thought he mentioned something like that.
Yeah. And so we were doing this great project. It was a Rodney Dangerfield project, which is, again, I was sort of on the hunt for projects that I thought didn't necessarily breathe in a children's lane,
Uh-huh.
And so I was brought on as a sequence director for Rover Dangerfield, and sort of got my feet wet in terms of directing, just the general bones of being involved in driving sequences and stuff like that from a directing standpoint. So when the guys brought the project to the studio, they were like, "Hey, we've been hunting around town for all these, just to try to pitch this project to get made. But we realized we step in the studio, there's no one of color here who understands, who Robin Harris is, and understands the humor of what it is. And so we land here, we meet. I knew Robin Harris, I knew the routine. It was just sort of a natural marriage. Because you got to understand, man, it's like in our business, animation, even still, probably represents maybe, 3 to 5% African American. So you chop up that 3 to 5% of actual people who actually have the skill set of doing something like that. Right?
Yeah.
So you now coming across a very small number of people that actually sort of can give you the Black experience, so to speak. So thankfully, we met, we hit it off. It was great. And I just started in on it pretty much immediately, just started designing characters. And initially we were, again, looking at the scope as sort of a television show. Mm-hmm. That's how they were pitching it. Television show, Bebe's Kids, Robin Harris, who's sort of like, if I were to explain it to our audience, sort of like he was Bernie Mac before Bernie Mac. That's the best way to describe Robin Harris. Both from Chicago, and both have a certain patois, in terms of their delivery. It's very rhythmic. Sometimes people used to have a hard time understanding Bernie Mac, but you understand the rhythm of a joke, and it's just funny. So yes, I started designing, and we started creating the world of Bebe's Kids, and had some really great art director. Doug Walker at Disney was jumped in, started creating some really great stuff for me. Fred Klein started creating some really great stuff. I started designing characters and just kind of creating this world. And at the time, Hyperion had a 3-picture deal with Paramount. And so Brandon Tartikoff was running the studio at the time. And so he came into the studio, saw the projects on the wall, sort of like show and tell. And he immediately gravitated to, what is this? And he was referencing the Bebe's Kids stuff that was on the wall. I said, yes, Bebe's Kids is a project we're doing for TV. And as the story goes, Brandon Tartikoff says, let's make this into a movie.
Wow.
So that's kind of how it happened.
Man, that's fantastic.
Yeah, we had a very small budget to make a very small film. Reggie wrote a fantastic and funny script, and we found some actors to replicate, the characters. Robin Harris wasn't around, so we found Faison Love, who did a fantastic job at recreating Robin Harris. People think that Robin Harris actually did the voice in that. No, that was Faison. You guys, if there's your audience out there familiar with the movie Friday, Faison played Big Worm. So just throwing that out there, just in case you guys are Googling stuff. That's all. Faison, very funny, hilarious comedian.
Now, he did this based upon the artwork that you did?
Yes.
That's amazing.
All the artwork just on the wall as a presentation piece, and we just said, let's roll with that.
What do you think made him gravitate towards it, just out of curiosity?
It's still different. I mean, I think right away it's like, I was it had a vibe of something familiar. One of the things I wanted to do is make the characters feel familiar to you, but just in a different world.
Gotcha.
Like I said, I loved the Flintstones growing up, so the characters felt very much like a Hanna-Barbera.
Mm.
You know, if Hanna-Barbera was from Watts, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, is that Jesse Barbera and Ethra Hammond? Hanna-Barbera? Yeah, so I kind of really made it feel like it was very familiar to you, and I think that's probably how we gravitated to it. I mean, like I made the design simple just because I had to stay simple in terms of thinking about production flow. You know what I mean? And listen, I had a ball doing it, and I guess it just showed up on the wall because it was my first time getting a chance to draw people of color from just huge diaspora areas I was grabbing.
Yeah.
So normally you don't get that when it's like any TV show right now. It's like you always get that one African American character that has to carry, the all things African American on his back throughout the show. You know what I mean? But now in this case, you've got a whole
community,
a whole community of folks that you can paint them with every stroke of what we know of what it is to be African American. So that was that, and I think the thrill of that sort of like it just felt different.
Now, what was your role on that?
So I was director.
Okay.
So just started doing design stuff like that, and just kind of guided the crew from there.
Now, okay. So as an animator, one of your first things you do is you start kind of doing research. What was it for you? Because you mentioned that this was, you were able to be kind of picked up and click, so to speak, because you're African American. How did you, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of pass that on, so to speak, to your crew there who wasn't?
Right.
How did you
that's a good question, because that was part of the challenge, I guess, of working on a film like that, because again, the only thing that we had was our history on African American characters. So, so now you're going back to Cole Black and the Seven Dwarves, or the Crows from Dumbo, or pick your poison, all the Plank stuff, the Tex Avery stuff, Chuck Jones stuff. Everybody was guilty of putting something on the screen that, and mind you, I don't think all of it was done out of
vindictiveness,
trying to clown, the black community. I think a lot of what Bob Clampett was doing was sort of embracing. He used to hang out in the jazz circuit in LA back in the day, and he was simply trying to grab that energy and put it on the screen.
Yeah,
so I get that. But a lot of people were really afraid to touch it, mainly because, like, look at Song of the South, it still ain't come out. You know what I mean? Like, they're scared of stuff like that. I get that. So you had to eliminate the toxins, so to speak. And so, to be honest, man, there were some guys on the crew that didn't want to work on the movie, because they thought the characters the kids themselves represented gang characters. In other words, they thought they represented a gang culture that they simply didn't want to be part of.
Gotcha.
But that wasn't what it was. Like, you have these characters growing up, they throwing up gang signs. No, they're not throwing up gang signs. This is how these kids, if you look at you, and this is a time where, this is 1992, video, you had videos out now, now you're talking about, just think about like the culture, Black people just on our own, we define the culture. So the culture at the time was,
Tupac
Tupac, Death Row, Eazy-E, Dr. Dre.
Yeah.
Look at their videos. Look at what they're doing. We were trying to capture just the idea of these kids who are not gang members, because I grew up across the street from Bebe's kids, technically. So I know those snotty-nosed kids. You know what I'm saying? So research all my life. You know what I mean? So so I knew who these characters were, but trying to put your crew at ease to understand that, some people don't necessarily, let's be real, some people don't necessarily interact with Black people on the daily, so they don't know exactly how to handle some of these designs and characters that are from them, give them that authentic feel.
Right.
I remember one dude, I'm not going to name his name, but we were doing tests, animation tests, just general calisthenics, you know what I mean? It's like run cycles, walk cycles, blah, 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 right? This one dude did a test with one of the characters where he literally had his knuckles dragging on the ground. Yeah, man. I was like, dog. I was like, really, man? Really? You think this? I think it's funny. He was telling me. He said he thought it was funny. I was like, man, I will slap the living shit out of you. So,
that will be funny. Yeah.
Yeah, right. You know what I'm saying? It was somewhat unnerving. Now, mind you, that's just one person in the group.
I understood. Yeah.
And mind you, I honestly think that he thought it was funny. Like, I really just looking at.
He didn't think it was offensive. He just thought,
didn't think it was offensive or anything at all. So there was that education, I think, of just kind of like, hey guys, let's kind of figure out what works and what doesn't work, so I can let you guys know. So there was that thing. But for the most part, I think the guys I had a really great crew, and guys were really enthusiastic about doing something different, which was great.
Cool.
You know?
Yeah.
It wasn't the musical in the most musical sense. And I think, you know, and there's so many things I would have done different on that movie now, you know, but I'm happy with what it is and what it represents. And the most interesting thing for me is like, that was Baby's Kids. That was 25 years ago. Mm-hmm. It's just interesting to me. And it tells you sort of like, you know, when I go back to the idea of like, this industry represent 3 to 5% African-American. We don't necessarily have any African-American execs that are looking in this direction. But it's been 25 years and there's been nothing, no one's even tried to, let's dive into the African-American culture and try to, you know, create a story that actually, you know, feels, you know, more authentic, and, you know, let's tell a story with an African-American character as the lead. Let's do something along those lines, right? No one's really done that yet, except for me. I say that not in a bragging sense. I'm saying that I did Baby's Kids and I did The Proud Family. Like, I've covered TV and I've covered movies. You know? And we still can't seem to gain traction on just the general conceit of like really having an African-American character or characters, you know, drive your story. You know, it's like
with the exception of maybe
look, there's been Captain Underpants. You know, there's Captain Underpants had the one character that Kevin Hart.
I was thinking Princess and the Frog though.
Princess and the Frog was that movie also.
Right.
But, you know,
not a whole lot.
But nothing. Well, I always joke about Princess and the Frog, sort of like we have Princess and the Frog, which is African American. Then the movie that followed was Tangled, which was no African American. Like it was in an imaginary place, you know, with a woman whose hair can grow, you know, 300 yards. So when you do that, you open up the envelope to include everybody, because this is an imaginary world. If a girl's hair can grow 300 yards long, like you can have all sorts of people in this movie helping you tell the story, but not one single one. Then you follow that up with Frozen, and it's like, you know, this is a story where a girl can actually, you know, ice over this entire place. So it's a fantasy. Doesn't matter what, it can happen anywhere. You can have anybody here helping you tell the story, but you know, it's like it's devoid of inclusion, I would say.
Gotcha.
And I would just, you know, it's always been my hope to like just simply be inclusive. Like every project that I try to work on that I actually have to head, whatever that is, to lead, all my projects have always been about inclusion. Like, you know, even if there are African Americans that are leading the story, I always make sure that there are other characters of color that can carry the narrative too from a television standpoint. We did that with Baby's Kids. We did that with Proud Family. And just makes it more interesting and more real when you've got different points of view, you know, on things. And that was the fun part about doing Proud Family, is that we made sure we had lots of different points of view, you know, on the topics and the stories that we were trying to tell.
Gotcha. That's very cool. Very neat. So now that was out before, kind of on your own, before going back to Disney and working on something like Princess and Frog and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get back there?
So let's see. So through Baby's Kids, worked on Space Jam, another black film.
Yeah. Michael Jordan.
I joke. I said Michael Jordan and Daffy Duck. Daffy Duck was black. Black Duck. So, you know, so it was really after Space Jam where I got the call to come and work on Tarzan. And that's what brought me back to studio the second time. Working on Tarzan, Chris Buck, Kevin Lima, great directors, really great friends, and got a chance to work with Kerchak. Now, my history had just been working on, you know, characters that are just of a serious nature or of a silly nature, you know, broad animation. I love that stuff, you know, Roger Rabbit and all the characters from, you know, various kids and all that fun stuff, drawing style and everything like that.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Kerchak was just very different. Like he had to be very serious, you know, and so that I appreciate because it really sort of helped stretch, you know, my draftsmanship styles and acting. It really sort of helped me sort of, you know, bring another dimension to the acting.
Very nice. Any mentors there that kind of helped you with that aspect of?
Absolutely, man. Glenn King was incredible.
Okay.
You know, Glenn King's drawings were just like masterpieces. Like his storyboards were just like incredible pieces of work. Like you wish the film looked like his drawings. You know what I mean? It's like it's incredible. The moments that he would create on his boards, you couldn't even script it, or he would, if you scripted it, his interpretation of it was just masterful, just incredible.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some really great animators in that movie. You know, Ken Duncan, Randy Haycock. Sergio Pablos is the shit. You know, like Sergio. I know a lot of folks probably listen. Sergio's a real deal. I mean, like the just, you know, his draftsmanship alone is fantastic, but his sense of timing. You know, you got as a 2D artist, you have to, your abilities will stop as far as your draftsmanship will take you. You know what I mean? It's like you can't draw certain things. You need to keep shit simple. You know what I mean? And Sergio can give you very complex characters because he can draw it. And his timing and his ability to see. You know, as an animator, you know, if you really can see the performance in your head, see a very sophisticated performance in your head, that's the only way you're going to be able to get it down on paper. You know, most of the time we start a shot, we're looking at just simply a white sheet of paper, start thumbnailing stuff, and we create this performance. But it's up to you as an animator to have that imagination to be able to see a performance beyond just the standard, you know, okie doke. You know what I'm saying? You have to be an entertainer at the end of the day. And no matter what shot you have as an animator, there's always some juice in it somewhere. No matter what it is, there's always a different way to approach it. And all you have to do is look at live action to understand that, you know, even if it's a look, if it's a simple look, if it's a turn, if it's a take, something that alerted your character off screen, there's always different ways to approach it that isn't in your normal bag of tricks that will make it feel unique and different. And that's your job as an animator, not to be always going back to your bag of tricks.
Yep.
Yeah. And Sergio's one of those guys.
I do have a question for you. I posted this on Twitter and asked, and I have Mark Hendry. He asked the question. He said, I would like to know any particular things you did to make Kerchak feel strong and heavy. Were there any specific methods you used to research or study reference?
Oh, man. You know, the thing with Kerchak was like, I got some really great drawings from Glenn and I forget our director. I think Paul Felix gave us some stuff. I can't think of the guy's name. Oh, man. Oh, jeez. I remember it afterwards. Just got some incredible, like, ape drawings that really sort of, like, helped me find my way in the beginning to really add some solid, you know, listen, I'm not the greatest draftsman at all, and I can find little tricks and things like that, shortcuts in between that help get to the long version. I had to shortcut some things to understand the long version, if that makes any kind of sense. So I had to understand how to draw him more convincing first to kind of give you that weight and that sort of, because that was necessary. I mean, he's the character where if he's not as serious as he seems, then Tarzan's task won't feel as heavy as it needs to be. So I had to make sure that I matched up with Glenn and all the drama that he was bringing to Tarzan and stuff. In shots when they were together in shots and they had to fight or discuss or whatever. And then there was this dying scene in the end where it had to really feel serious. And, you know, and I had some fun with that shot. But yeah, it was, first thing was really drawing it and then the other side was like really trying to find footage because you know anything about gorillas, you go to the zoo and watch a gorilla, he'll just sit and stare. You know what I mean? He won't give you any action whatsoever. Little chimpanzees and stuff like that will do some stuff, but if a gorilla know you watching, he ain't gonna give you nothing. And I remember just like watching this gorilla, man, and he was just like looking off to the, like he knew I was looking at him, but he was just like looking just past me. He's not going to give me nothing. I'm shooting footage. And he just kind of gets up and walks to the other side, turns his back to me, but he left like a pile of crap, right there. Right, we got up from, I'm like, oh, okay. So
he's like, here's your footage.
Yeah, here's your footage right here. Take this. So I couldn't get much traction from that. So a lot of stuff I just simply had to kind of, okay, let me look at this film and see this fake guy in a gorilla outfit and then try to,
do what felt natural. Yeah.
So I didn't have much to grasp onto, and just kind of roll with just general guerrilla movement and stuff like that for the most part, and just kind of use my imagination after that.
Yeah. No YouTube at that time, huh?
No, dog. Which is like we had that. What's the book of movement? The kinetic book that all animators sort of reference. I can't think of the one that just simply has walk cycles of humans and animals and.
Yeah. I can't think of it offhand either.
But just had that, and just to understand the general, mechanics of how an ape would move and how the weight shifts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Studied a lot of that just to make the weight believable and all of that stuff, and then just kind of went from there and just kind of roll with it.
Cool. Thank you. Are we good on time?
Yeah, I got about another 20 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you. This has been great. On Emperor's New Groove, Princess and the Frog, I looked on your IMDb, and you were a supervising animator there.
Yeah.
What was the route for you to be moved up in those positions?
So coming off of Tarzan, I was offered a couple different films. What was one? Was a Treasure Planet maybe?
Mm-hmm.
And Lilo and Stitch. And Lilo and Stitch was sort of, it was a role that required me to move to Florida. I wasn't trying to do that. And Treasure Planet was just a small role. And I thought coming off of Kerchak, I'm like, I'm ready to do something, bigger, fun. And that's when Mark Dindal, they were just rebooting from Kingdom of the Sun to Emperor's New Groove,
Okay.
And me and Mark, we go back a ways, and Mark said, well, hey, why don't you handle Kerchak, which is sort of like a straight man to Cusco. I saw the drawing style, loved Joe Mosier's designs, and was like, yeah, let's do this. This looks fun. So I got to soup a crew of about 8 or 9 people. It's a big crew, mainly because we're trying to get it done really quick,
Okay.
And that was fun because the character had, there was certain seriousness to him, but the graphic nature of the design led to an easy way to draw. But I wanted that sophisticated animation, again, sort of being a huge fan of Milt Kahl and trying to grasp, the sort of, wearing the wristband of what would Milt do, So it was like that thing, and had a fun time. I mean, I really had a fun time working on that film. It was so funny and very different from all the other films that were being made there at the time. It was very Chuck Jonesy,
Okay, yeah.
A very non-Disney feeling movie.
Yeah, definitely different look. Yeah, and feel.
Yeah. It was fun, and that was a really sort of a kudos to Mark for having something breathe a bit differently, at studio. Not following the normal patterns of storytelling.
Gotcha. And then from there, how quickly did you move on to Princess of the Frog?
So from there, that's actually when at the end of that movie is when I was pitching my TV show.
Okay.
And we got the pitched it. Nickelodeon wanted to do a pilot, so that's when I left the studio. I was like, well, I can't do both. I'm gonna go all in on this TV show right now.
And that was Proud Family, or
that was Proud Family,
okay.
Yes. So that was 2001. So I came back to the studio after having my own studio for about 7 years. Came back, I got a call from Ron and John saying, hey, we got this project, I want you to come see. And it was Princess and the Frog. And so they just rolled it out to me. And they were like, look, which character would you want to do in this movie? I'm like, wow. Hey, that sounds a whole lot different from Treasure Planet. but they respected delay. So I was good with that. So I was like, this villain, obviously, I mean, you can't go wrong with a Disney villain.
Yeah.
And so that's how Facilier fell in my lap. And I knew right away that he was going to be a very different character,
Now, watching that video, and we'll link it on the blog where we post the podcast, from watching that video that you had on your Twitter, you got to design the character, come up with the look and feel?
So yeah, so the way that works is that the way it works at Disney, from a hand drawn standpoint, is that there's VizDev,
Mm-hmm.
where the guys, I think the VizDev artists, everybody sort of takes a crack at all the characters,
Uh-huh.
So we kind of arrive at all the sweet spots in the characters. This looks good. This drawing looks good. This drawing looks good. So now it's up to the animator to take, all these different versions and kind of mush them up,
Uh-huh.
and create a character that you feel like you can drive, that is married with the style of the film. And that's always the problem in a lot of these movies. Like, it's like taking all those different great VizDevs, because VizDev drawings are always fantastic,
Mm-hmm.
and now making it like production friendly.
Okay.
So you lose a lot of things. You know what I mean? You lose a lot of things trying to solidify it to fit in a uniform style of the film.
Okay. That's an interesting challenge for you then.
It is a challenge. It's a challenge for all the animators, because
Yeah.
all the animators are given that opportunity to do that. So so it just becomes a very, how would you say, you're trying to marry your drawings to the other guys. You know what I mean? So it's like I have to make sure that when Tiana's on the screen, she looks like she belongs in the same film as Dr. Facilier.
Right.
Yeah. So when and to be honest, totally honest, for me, that's one of the drawbacks for Princess and Frog, is that some of the characters feel like they don't necessarily belong in the same film.
Okay.
And that's one of the things I liked about like working on Emperor's New Groove, for example, because you have one designer, you know what I mean,
Mm-hmm.
who actually can take your drawings, but you can do it in reverse, kind of reverse engineer it. Take your drawings. Now he draws over those drawings, and now fits them within the style of the film.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the approach that I would take. Let the animators kind of do whatever they want to do it to get the animated concept that they want to get.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give it to my main guy, who's going to draw over and marry all these characters together to feel like they all belong in the same world.
Now, design-wise, I think Dr. Facilier is absolutely amazing. So was there anything that you felt was lost getting it production ready? Or do you feel like...
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think, sometimes you got to hit the ground running. I think in a lot of cases, scene one of Dr. Facilier and my final scene of Dr. Facilier, two different characters completely.
Okay.
You probably would never know, but visually, I'm probably drawing two different characters.
Okay, I'll have to watch it again.
Yeah.
It's been a bit.
Yeah, but the thing is that we aren't doing the film in chronological order either.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
You would know what my last scene was. You know what I mean?
There you go. You got me.
But I think, and that happens with all the animators. I'm not unique in that sense. I think all the animators would say, there was a drawing arc in their character because they knew the character.
You're getting better and better, yeah.
Getting better and better. You start to know the character, starting to know how to draw them, what things to do to draw, what attitudes that you get away with, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think it's with every film.
Okay.
Yeah.
Real quick, because I know don't want to take up too more of your time here. Again, you've been a supervising animator, you've co-directed, you've directed, you've been a biz dev artist, character designer. That is an amazing career to date here. Are there any areas that you enjoyed more, or any things that have stood out in that lifespan to date so far in those kind of roles?
I think you mentioned all that. I was talking to a classroom, I think a little while ago, and I talked about how important it is to learn more than one discipline.
Okay.
Like, for example, as an animator, I learned story because me storyboarding characters helped tell the story and form my animation. You know what I mean? So you understood how to sort of tell a story. Character designer sort of came as like, okay, I need to create a character that I think that I can actually animate, that's actually equipped for the animation that I want to do. It's almost like I equate it to like, if you're a race car driver, and if you're given a shitty car, you know what I mean? It's like, you're not going to be able to drive it worth a damn, even if you're a great race car driver. Mm-hmm. So that race car driver, if he's involved in designing the car that he needs, he knows exactly what he needs.
Yeah.
And now he hits a highway and he can go, 200 miles an hour because he's got the car that he was involved in designing. Gotcha. So in that case, it's the same thing. It's like, I think Milt Kahl's a great designer, and people responded to those designs from an animation standpoint because he made it ready for you as an animator. There's no excuse for you to mess up this scene because these drawings are fantastic.
Uh-huh.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And because he understands all the design cues and everything that's necessary to act with this character. So I learned that as a necessity. Those three disciplines dovetail into each other.
Uh-huh.
So I think, it really kind of helps elongate my career in a sense.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Because people know me for these things. They know me as a designer. They know me as an animator. They know me as a story artist and a director. All those things kind of dovetail into directing because, you have to understand how to tell a story. Storyboard artists, how to tell a story. Disney picks all their directors from the storyboard, from the story crew, not necessarily from the animator crew or anything like that. Right now, they go straight from story into directing. So, so all that helps, in terms of having, skill sets, various skill sets.
Gotcha.
All can be rewarding, to be honest. I love, even if I'm directing, I love getting involved in all those areas. I don't like to just simply dictate as a director. It's like I like to let me explain this as a drawing. Let me board this out for you so you can see what I'm doing.
Cool.
Let me design this character so you can see what how big we need to make his hands so they can be more ready to act with and stuff like that. Or
very cool.
Let me design his face. Let me design the eyes so we can understand how the character needs to communicate. All that stuff is just simply it's necessary. And also, like I say, artists speak artists. You know what I mean? It's like guys communicate that way. I learned just working with a lot of Korean artists. We didn't speak the same language, but if I can put a piece of paper down and draw it for you, they understand it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's the best way to be bilingual is pencil to the paper. So that's been helpful, I think, also. And also, man, listen, I think I tend not to. I love making a film where everyone's involved, and again, it's like everyone has a piece of this. Everyone owns this, and all ideas are really good ideas. When I was at DTS, we were doing these shorts, and we had a term that one of the writers coined. When you blue sky an idea. But we're not going to blue sky idea. We're going to blue sky this idea because I just be coming out of left field with some of the craziest shit ever. You know what I mean? You can't be scared to throw the most ignorant stuff up against the wall because you don't know who's going to latch onto it and say, "Hey,
run with it from there."
Just said it's really crazy, but if we did this with this and that, and now it's now it's back in a place we actually can do something with.
That's awesome.
So that was a term that you say, okay, thanks for that. But I mean, it's true. I think the greatest ideas come out of a place where you just aren't afraid to throw the most bizarre stuff up against the wall and see what matters. And that helps too. And that actually loosens up your room to let them know that anything kind of goes and let's just go for it.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Last question here. Kind of dovetailing on that. Is there anything that you feel like, hey, I'd still like to do in the future? Or do you feel like, hey, I'm enjoying the ride now. Yeah. I've kind of had a chance to do a variety of things. I'm enjoying what I'm doing now. I'm enjoying, whatever else may come up, or do you have certain other goals that I'd still like to be able to do the X?
Man, I have so much stuff I want to do. Like, especially now that, that animation, animation is sort of at the king of entertainment right now. You know what I mean? And now there's so many stories that are being told. And thankfully, you thank your lucky stars for a place like Pixar because they really opened up, the storytelling, id of animation.
Right.
I mean, the risks that they take in terms of telling stories and just how satisfying a lot of the films that they do are, it just made animation such an acceptable medium that now we kind of cherry pick off a lot of what Pixar does. That's okay because they recognize it, and I'm sure that they start to elevate their game even more so. I mean, literally,
for sure.
I'm telling you, dude, when I saw The Incredibles, man, I was like, that was like a game changer for me. It was like I fucking cried. I fucking cried because I didn't work on it for one thing, and just the other, just because I knew this was a film I've been waiting on for such a long time.
Uh-huh.
And not only it's just like, it just, and again, it's just like they had Frozone in there. This resonated with me. It's like, oh, good. It's like, here's a guy who's just as super as Mr. Incredible.
Uh-huh.
We don't make a big deal about it. He's just there.
That's just, but yeah, like,
perfect. It's like, yeah, we just can't make more movies like that. Like you see, it can work. Like,
yeah,
it can work in theory. So just because of that, I feel like there's lots of ideas that are just sitting in my, in my little silly, simple head that and my heart that I feel like, now's the time to really start, flexing, the flexing my muscle and getting stuff out there. So yeah, I'm inspired, man. I'm
cool.
Really inspired to do lots of really cool things. I'm still young, so
yeah, absolutely. And that's I was hoping that didn't come across the other way. I'm just looking at your what you've accomplished thus far, and it's just been absolutely amazing.
I'll never die. I'm still going.
And the other thing is too, you look at how the industry's changed in regards to, and I brought this up in another podcast, with Amazon Prime and Netflix and Hulu and YouTube Red and things of that nature. It's opened up an opportunity for additional type stuff like that.
Indeed. I mean, that's what's great. It's like all these different outlets now that are looking for content.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think a lot more people are going to get shots now to really do and create some really cool stuff that breaks animation out of that sort of, lack of a better word, kid genre. You know what I mean? It's like there's been some projects that have been made that shows that an audience will accept projects that are a bit more mature, like a Sausage Party or whatever. But there's so many different things to do in the realm of telling a story,
right?
That I think when you have movies like that come out and make $100 million at the box office, it makes people sort of, oh, okay, well, that actually worked. And it just leads to hopefully what we would hope would be a potpourri of ideas that would just simply be, coming into this medium and opening up the, opening up everybody's idea of what an animated film is or animated TV show is or whatever.
Right.
That really helps expand the medium.
Yeah.
Really what we want right now.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, Bruce, I greatly appreciate your time. This has been an awesome podcast.
Hi, Larry. I appreciate you reaching out, man. This has been fun.
Thank you very much. Well, I look forward to maybe at some other time, either meeting you in person, maybe having another podcast. But yeah, just thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
Yes, sir. Thank you, man.
All right. Hey, take care.